All right, good evening and welcome to the Thursday, March 12th, 2020 Newmarket Conservation Commission meeting. I will start by leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Present.
Marion Hannigan.
Present.
Melissa Sharple.
Present.
David Bell.
Here.
Here. Casey Ditch.
Here.
I guess. Ellen Snyder.
Here.
All right, are you a member of the public here to make a public comment?
I was just here at the creation meeting. Last time I was here, there was a few more people.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm just from Great Bay. I'm just here to listen in on how you guys do what you do.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, next on the agenda, we have the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Did everyone get a chance to review those minutes? Are there any questions, additions, edits, anything? Motion to approve those minutes? Do I have a motion?
A motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I wasn't here, so.
You're going to abstain?
I'll abstain.
Okay.
I wasn't here. Well, I obviously wasn't here either.
So we have a quorum, so we don't need to appoint Ellen.
Well, Ellen can't. Are you?
Yes,
I'm an alternate.
she's an alternate.
Oh my God, that's so great. Welcome.
I think we're okay though. We've got 4 members here, so we should 3, 4. Yep. But I do want to welcome Ellen Snyder, our newest alternate. Ellen has served on the commission before and is a subject matter expert that is great to have on the commission as an alternate. So we are very happy to have you joining us, and
Nice to be back.
we can use your expertise greatly. I can state that without any equivocation. All right. So treasurer's report. I do not have a treasurer's report. There have not been any expenses that I'm aware of that we had since the last meeting, but I don't have a report to share with you. All right. Drew, do we have a seat up here for you if you want to come and join us? Casey, do you want to give us a report from the town council?
Yeah, not too much to report on, with a little bit of downtime with elections and whatnot, but we did try to host the organizational meeting for the Riverfront Advisory Committee, and we had to reschedule because we couldn't make it that night, so we're going to reschedule with the UNH students. The only thing to report on that is that the UNH students, the engineering students, actually do have a whole bunch of ideas drafted out. So basically our role is to kind of more or less pick and choose what they've done and give them any recommendations for things that we would like them to do in addition to what they've been doing over the past year. So there's stuff that's already been done, it's just we're looking for our feedback.
So do you think you'd be meeting with them sometime soon?
I hope so. I mean, we tried to meet about a week ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not sure when the reschedule is going to be yet.
I'm just thinking with our emergent situation, if they had even any recommendations off of that they saw, that might be helpful. Any updates on the Tucker property purchase? Nothing. Okay. When do you guys schedule to meet next?
I don't think we're going to meet till next month. I think we can cancel our next meeting.
Okay.
So it's going to be April, I think.
All right. And were you at the meeting that was reviewed? I know that Steve wasn't, the chief of police was. I know Drew was at that meeting where you guys discussed the Tucker property purchase with the council. Did you get the sense there still needed to be one more vote from the council?
Yeah, so when I reread the resolution and looked at what was there, it looked to me like it was a green light. But
Okay.
I would defer to Steve.
Yeah, I missed that meeting, so I was.
And I just haven't heard anything back from Steve yet. So I did, ask again in an email if there was anything else that they needed, they could let us know, because I know that there's, some urgency around getting this closed up, because everything else I think is in place, all the other funding at this point.
I can check back in with Steve, what the status.
Yeah, that would be great. Planning board, Sarah?
We didn't have a meeting on Tuesday because of the election, so our next meeting is next
Oh,
Tuesday.
pass those down.
So we haven't met since our last conservation meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, the only things that really there's nothing really pending before us as far as things that I had to review. It looks the only permit that came through was the Grant Road culvert. It's a very small culvert. That looks like that's been approved. I don't know if you even would know of a small culvert that they're working to replace, so they had to get a wetlands permit. The town did, so that went through. So I'm sure they'll work on that.
That's the one that's a little bit before Ash Swamp.
Yeah,
if you're going out of town.
before the Four Corners stop there. Yep. And yeah, the only other thing that I had was just following up on the Tucker property purchase. Hopefully we can get that all together and executed soon, because I think everything else is in place. Maybe also, now that the election is over, we can revisit the Clark Farm easement to see what next steps need to happen there too. Those are kind of just our two biggest things pending before the council to kind of get resolved and hopefully move forward on. The other thing that we have, and it's apropos that Ellen is here, is that over a year ago, it was January of 2019, we actually asked for a proposal for her to do a trail map, and we did approve that, and my fault, I just kind of let it drop and let it sit there, and so then came back to Ellen and say, hey, I think we forgot to let you know we gave you the green light on this. So she went back to work on it and actually has something to share. So she can pass that around.
Thank you.
So the idea is with our new gate and that part sort of worked out, that we would want to have a new trail map and kiosk signage right there at the parking lot, so that people can explore. So I'll let Ellen tell us a little bit about this map that she shared with us.
Sure. Let me just get out a note on here. So I have some questions. I was out on the property a couple times, so I don't know if everybody's pretty familiar with Heron Point Sanctuary, but I hadn't been out there in a really long time, so I think there's some trail issues and some stewardship issues which are unrelated to the trails, but some questions I have about the trail. So this is just a draft. A couple questions are, what size of map do you want? Do you want it to be, kind of like the Piscastic Loisel for the kiosk, so it could be like yay big, or you can still print it off this size. It'd be a little bit small, but so I need a little bit of guidance on do you want to do one big map and then also have it as a PDF on the web or wherever, and people could download it as a trail map. And then I have some questions about the trails themselves. So
Okay.
I don't know how you want to proceed, but
What I think we could tackle the easy part first, which is I think the idea of going with that same size sign that we have at Piscastic Loisel, same size map would be perfect. I don't know what other people think, but I think that's a good size.
And I think we had a little bit of description about the property in there too. We could add some of that if you want. So I could base it off that same idea. That one we did do an aerial photo background, and I know I talked to you, Patrick, about doing just a topo background.
I think
I know, it's just a little more interesting, I think, in terms of sometimes the aerial photo is just a little bit too much. So the trails don't show up as well and so forth. It's basically completely forested, so it doesn't really tell you. It would show some of the surrounding landscape, but is that really, what's important for the map, right, is the trail
Right.
system, I think, on the property, so. But I could, if you like, the colors or whatever, we can change that, but, so that makes sense to me. I can scale that up and then get it printed in.
Now, as far as the trails, I actually don't know what the history of those trails are because it's been very informal over there as long as I've been on the commission, as far as what was actually an official trail and what wasn't an official trail. I think of the trail system as being sort of the one that's on the boundary that you show going right closest to the water. And then I do think there's some maybe little informal trails that are in there as well. I don't know.
Yeah, so I can tell you what I think are the main trails, and then there's one that I don't know if you want to have as a trail, or we want to have as a trail. So the colors are a little bit similar, but when you go from the parking area, you go down, and then there's the sitting area and the various boardwalks. So those are there. And then the red trail, if you can see that color, it goes along the Lamprey River. There's a scenic view down at the far end, and then it curves back. So I actually named the trails because so those are my names, so we can change them, but I just thought trails need names. So I think they should be color coded, and then they also have a name. So, or they could just be the red trail, whatever. But, so that I called the main loop trail, because that is the one that has been there for a really long time. And then that little yellow one is, I called it a connector trail. It takes you back to the entrance road. So that's always been there as well. And then if you come back, there's sort of a yellow, I know it looks kind of funky with this scale, but it's a yellow trail that goes over to the private property and stops. And that has always sort of been there as well. So we'll get back to that area because I have some questions about that particular area. But so there's that trail. And then there's this, it's supposed to be purple, but the trail that goes down along toward that corner where the private property is, and then along the Lamprey River again. That is a rogue trail, what I would call rogue trail. It's kind of neat, but it's really on a very steep, rocky, couple ravines sort of a site. So I think the decision has to be made, do we want to keep that trail or should that trail be closed? If we want to keep it, it would need some work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know what.
I would probably lean more towards closing it because if it's not at a good, if it's steep or it's difficult to traverse, we probably don't want to encourage that trail, and that could be something where if we might have to put some trees across it or something like that. But I think that the red and the yellow is more than sufficient. I don't know if other people have thoughts on it, but yeah, I don't think we want that purple trail.
Yeah, excuse me, and people can always bushwhack places, but
Right.
it is a pretty erodible. I
Yep.
mean, I think it would be problematic to maintain, and there have to be some bridges built and so forth. It's kind of an interesting area, but I don't know.
Is that the one that says, that you call River Loop?
Yeah, I call it the River Route ? I just gave it a name
Okay.
just to give it a name, but it's a pretty. People use it. It's probably some people with dogs, is my guess, or something, because it looks like that type of a trail. But
Yeah, so I've been out there, I was out there last fall at least, and the intersection of the river loop and the main loop, they intersect at what is sort of a little ravine.
yeah,
If you want to get onto that river loop trail, you have to drop steeply down and then kind of come back up. So I suspect that's an area where from a trail sustainability point, that would be kind of difficult to. You'd almost need to build some sort of bridge or structure there
Yep.
in order to minimize the downward and immediate back up.
I agree that I know exactly where you're talking about, and I agree. I don't think that's a safe place for people to. It's very steep there.
And you might be able to do it connecting further up the main loop, so go further away from the river, so that you have a less steep area and bring it around. From a big picture point of view, I don't think having the river loop trail there detracts from the habitat of the property, I would say. But if it were to stay, it should be in a way and in a place that is sustainable. That's
Right.
kind of my, because we're so close to the river, we don't want to be having a trail that creates erosion that's feeding things into the river, feeding dirt into the river.
Right.
And I think if
And
we
so
were,
that's kind of my
Yeah.
overall perspective. I don't have, I haven't walked on it, so I don't know if there's ways to make it sustainable, I guess is.
I think there certainly could reroute it. You could come back up to the yellow trail instead of going over the main trail. So, instead of staying along the river, you could bring it north, essentially back up to the yellow trail. So you still have a loop.
right,
So that's a possibility. It's still a little steep over there, but it is interesting over there because you can see the topographic lines. It's really talus-y and rocky. So it's interesting, and people probably want to go see it.
well, and it's clearly being used. I mean,
Yeah.
I noticed that tonight, that there's a lot of traffic there, and my question too would be is if we actually wanted to do something, so let's say we said, okay, we'll trail, we would be required to get some permitting to do that because of its proximity to the river, wouldn't we?
Not necessarily. I don't think so.
Okay.
You're clear. You're not really. As long as if we needed bridges to bridge some wetlands, but I think the idea would be to reroute it so you don't have that
Right.
issue.
And because there's a lot of erosion over there too, I noticed, in terms of, well, I think it's what's happening actually is the salt water's coming up, the trees are dying, and then they're falling
Yeah.
into the river. So it might not be erosion more than just saltwater intrusion is killing some of the trees.
Yeah, and it goes right to the property, right to the guys, people that live in that
Yeah.
house. So
Yeah.
it might be to not go that far over, like maybe reroute it so you're not, it's pretty good, it's better to stay a little bit farther away from
Yeah.
a property boundary like that. maybe.
Yeah, I agree.
Is that a property with a house on it, or
Yeah.
it's just a lot?
Yeah, there's a house there. Yeah. Okay, so maybe we should go out there and scout out a different
Yeah.
route and see if it's
Yeah.
feasible
Definitely.
before we finalize the map. So that makes sense to me. So I forgot to put it on the map, but back on the main trail, you go from the parking and you walk on the main trail down toward that southern end of that loop. Kind of close to the southern end, there's a stretch that's pretty rooty and clayey and kind of eroded. And that's another place where I thought the trail could be slightly rerouted uphill, up away from the river just a little bit, like maybe 20, 30 feet of stretch of trail, and just reroute it rather than trying to build some log bridge or something. Just maybe try to reroute a little bit. So that was another place I thought we should look at if we go out there and look at this other trail.
And one of the things that Ellen pointed out is that we have both an infestation of the woolly agid, is that
Woolly adelgid and the hemlock.
woolly
hemlock.
woody adelgid, and possibly some emerald ash borers, because there's a lot of dead ash trees back there, like large ash trees that wouldn't necessarily be dead for any other reason, I would guess.
Yeah, they're all
And-
dead.
and
There's
they're
no
all-
ash trees that are alive.
They're all dead, so that is a little bit of a concern. Like, there's one hemlock that's dead right at the parking lot. Probably going to need to take that down because it's right at the parking lot. I almost would be concerned it could fall over onto somebody. And then the same thing will probably have to happen if we route that trail where that yellow is, or just between the yellow and the river loop. That's where the greatest concentration of those dead ash trees
Yeah.
is. A little area. It's really kind of sad to see, but yeah, there's a lot of trees out there, and a lot of them look pretty healthy, but not those ash
Yeah.
trees. There's plenty of other hemlocks that look okay. I don't know how quickly that will spread throughout the whole forest.
Yeah,
but-
there's a few that are right when you again go from on the boardwalk. If you start up on the main trail, there's a batch there that are heavily infested, so they will die at some point.
We did clear a bunch last year. We had a group that came and volunteered for a day, just of residents and community people who came together, and because they had fallen across the boardwalk, so we cleared quite a few that day. But yeah, I could see some more could be not that far from falling.
So one suggestion I have is to invite, I forget his name, Greg is his first name, but he's the county forester for our Rockingham County Extension. And he can come out for a walk and give some advice on what we might want to do out there in terms of whether you want to hire a forester or an arborist or whether we need to do anything, or he would talk about the whole forest and the whole property
Okay,
and walk around with them.
I think that
He's very good.
Yeah.
that
He's
would be a
very
good idea.
knowledgeable, and I think it'd be worth doing that, so.
Be helpful if we could save some of the trees.
Yeah, you might should take the ones out that have a delgid and maybe the rest will be okay, or, he might have
But
some
when you
ideas.
take them out, does that mean you have to actually haul the tree out of the area?
Probably, although I don't really know what the management is for that, if you've got some and others that are completely healthy, but he could tell
Okay.
us what to do. But I can contact him if you want and see if we could set up
Yeah,
a
that would be great.
sidewalk. Are people available during the week, in the morning or afternoon or late
Well,
afternoon?
certainly
or-
now it's better
Like 4
because
o'clock?
because even if
can
soon
see.
enough between. I don't know how late he is though. That's the thing.
I'm sure he would find a time.
Yeah, I mean, now between that 4:30 and 6:30 time period, you've got enough light, or we will certainly by the end of this month.
Greg Jordan, I remembered his name.
Yeah.
All right, so, yeah, all right, I can check with
So
them.
and then I think we could, if we did get a project again, we did have a volunteer named Dale Jones who was great at finding people who are interested in volunteering to do stuff out there, and I think he would be interested in helping again.
Does he live out there?
He does. He lives at Heron Estates there, so he's close by, and he regularly walks there, so it's kind of good because he keeps an eye on things. I mean, I didn't see any trash out there today, which was great when I walked out there
Yeah.
today. It looked very so.
Looks good. So the only other, a sort of clarification, I guess. So if you take the yellow trail out, and there's a little bridge, nice little footbridge, and it ends at that driveway. So is that a public entrance, or is that just for the people that live in the community there? Because the driveway is posted as no trespassing. And maybe you all know, but I was a little confused about that because it shows that it's part of Heron Point Sanctuary. So that driveway is just a right-of-way across there. It's not owned by the people that live there. It runs across Heron Point Sanctuary.
Right, as you're showing it
It's
on
my
the map.
understanding that's, because I researched all the deeds and I couldn't find where. So recently, the town did the transfer of ownership, right, of where the gate is now coming into Heron Point. There was some swapping of,
Yes.
some land was given and then the town got the right of way for the gate. And some of the notes say that there was gonna be something like that here, but I don't think it ever happened. But there is an relatively old deed that provides a right of way for the driveway across there. Whether those people know that, I don't know if people know that.
So in other words, you're saying technically people should be able to walk down the driveway to get to the property?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's a little bit of a, it might be something to talk to the town attorney to see who owns that.
Yeah.
But I guess the bridge was built, so what was the purpose of the trail on the bridge to go to that driveway? Do we know, is it for the community, or?
As far as I know, the access point that we have today to the parking lot is the way we've always wanted to push everybody out. All our signage is there. That's where we've worked very closely with the homeowners association there to make sure we were working well with them. And that's why we put in the electronic gate to try and make their lives easier and keep control. So I personally wouldn't suggest that we try and pursue an alternate.
Right, so the question then would be, if we show it's a trail, then people are gonna think it's a trail. And so, I mean, it is a trail, but we need to explain, is that like a private I think we need to clarify with the community there, and maybe with Dale, would he know that what's the situation with that? And then also, that whole eastern portion is pretty much, there's no trails, which is fine. But there is a little piece that goes out to Meadow Drive. And there, I noticed that there's a trail. I haven't walked up to there, but if you drive on Meadow Drive, that point, people use it. Must be they must probably walk their dog out into that section. So again, this is town land, so it's open to anybody. So we just have to clarify, are those two entry points being used just by that community, and is that legitimate? I mean, I think we have to figure that out.
Right.
This is the point.
And that bridge was put into, wasn't a town project or a conservation commission project, so it was put in, it kind of appeared, which is nice, but that's more recent, and it wasn't, there was kind of like a little bit of an overpass before, and then in the past couple of years that kind of showed up.
Interesting.
So a couple of things. So part of the yellow trail, if I remember correctly, is essentially an old woods road.
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of double wide and, looks like it was a
Yeah, pretty much
a
all the way to
logging
that
road.
bridge, is kind of like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
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 Um,
It's also very, not the first part, but sort of that, between the main trail and the river loop, kind of where you see the close topographic lines, there's a stretch there where it's very clay, and if you walk now, it's very soupy and very clay. So that's another trail where, is that where we want the trail? It's just there because it's an old road, or should that one also potentially, and if so, it'd be nice to really beef that up if we're thinking of keeping a loop there. And then maybe we I don't know if we discontinue, but we take away that yellow leg over to that bridge, because I think we need to figure out, because if we have that there, we're telling the public,
to go
We'll
there.
still
okay, there's
go
another
there.
way you can walk out to Meadow Drive and walk back
Right.
to your car on Meadow Drive, and I don't know if that's,
And
It's
on
a-
this map, is
yeah.
that a gap between the Meadow Drive? It looks like there's a small gap based on where I see the sanctuary markings in green.
yeah.
Is that what you have, or there's like a gap of, I don't know?
So, this is really a weird, I don't know if you all know the history of this, but Heron Point was gonna be a subdivision. So there's a whole plat of where all the houses, the road was gonna be Heron Point Road, I think, and then there's like 30 houses were gonna be in where Heron Point Sanctuary is. And the road was gonna come off Meadow Drive. And a lot of the deeds are based on that road existing. So this house lot that says private property, the deed for that is based off that there's a Heron Point Drive. And so that's why it's got kind of a funky arc there. You see how there's an arc to that? That's where the road was, really where the road is on the plat. And the deed describes it off of that road. It does not describe it on the drive.
I see.
So it's legally a very gray area. So I talked to Doucette Survey, which has done some of the survey work for and it may be, again, a question for the attorney, just to sort it out, to make sure we understand who owns what out there. It might be worth a review.
The point where the main trail and the river loop come together, on the south side, I'm wondering if if we're either going to reroute it or not encourage people to go there. I mean, that's where kind of where the boardwalk ends, right?
No, that's much farther back. That's
Okay.
way farther back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back.
So that's more like back in here.
Where the binoculars are, that's the farther,
Okay.
way up by the parking.
And this is where the other set of binoculars are. If you were to just keep going a little bit past that,
Yeah.
you can either go to the left and continue
Yeah.
back, or you can go across a little ravine, and then you're along this trail right here, which it's pretty faint at the end there, isn't it? When you get up to the property owner's
Yeah.
stone
yeah.
wall, it gets it's not a really
No, it's not heavily used.
it's
I-
not
yeah.
heavily used. Like deer pathy
You're
almost
right.
a little
I
bit.
suspect it's the neighbors, probably some people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how do you want to proceed with you? Should we talk with Steve?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I put down, might be easiest to just send this or bring this to Steve and ask him if he can review it with the town's attorney regarding all of the right-of-way issues, in particular off the driveway, I think
Yeah.
should be
Yeah,
addressed.
and I have all the plats and the deeds, and we can
Yeah.
look at it.
So I can just send an email with the two of us on it and Steve and ask him
Okay.
you know, we found these issues and we think we better get it. He's somewhat familiar because we've had
Yeah.
had a lot of issues at the other end, really. And part of this could be, and Casey might know too, but we had a long period of time where the gate was closed, and that may have encouraged some of the other access points because people wanted to get to the property, but they couldn't drive down. And so part of me says I don't want to, I don't blame people for still wanting to get there because it's such a great place to go. But yeah, now we've resolved that. We could say it's time to close this part off again.
Yeah, although I think, isn't Meadow Drive a private road?
I believe it is.
So if you look at the deed for what the town just recently did with the gate, the town got a deed, a right-of-way to use only the stretch of Meadow Drive that comes from Bay Road to the gate. So the rest of Meadow Drive is technically
Right.
private and not open to the public.
Right.
My understanding in reading the
Right. We
deeds.
told people that's exactly what they should do. They should drive to the gate, and then when they leave, they should drive back to Bay Road. Don't take the loop to exit. Yeah. But we might. We never really put any signage indicating
thinking
that,
that.
but and I don't. But we don't. I don't. That's never been the complaint. The complaint was more people coming out of hours. That was always the main complaint, and that's why we had the gate installed so it would close every night at 8 o'clock, and so people wouldn't come late at night down there.
Yeah, so one thing, if we still wanna keep that yellow trail out to that new little bridge, is there could be a sign right there that says it's not really private property beyond the way because there is a whole bunch of public land on the other side, but there might be some signage to say, this is not a public entrance or exit, right? You have to go back to the parking lot. Some sign, I think that depends on what we figure out.
Yeah,
in the
it'd be
ownership.
good for us to walk it,
Yeah,
cause I haven't been out there in so long.
yeah, I hadn't been out there in a while either, so.
I mean, I think another possibility would be if we want to consider that portion of the yellow trail with the bridge as for neighborhood use only, then you don't show it on the public
Right.
map.
Exactly,
And,
yeah.
and you have a little bit of signage at that intersection that says this way to go back to the parking lot.
Yeah. I had thought that too. I think that's a good,
It's
will probably
another-
be a good outcome.
Right. The only question I have, which I think is something you brought up, is should the public be able to access this whole
I know.
this
I was
whole
just thinking
section? And if the only way they can do it is to cross over that driveway and use that trail, even if it's just, I've never been over that
I'd
far.
like to go over
I've
there.
never been over there to actually walk it, because
Are
I
there any
just did,
unmarked trails over there, or is it just
No.
woods?
Yeah, it's just woods. Yeah.
it's just
There's
woods.
another ravine, there's another drainage
It-
over there,
Yeah,
and then you get to a stone wall, and then there's there's a power line over there.
so it's not necessarily super attractive to walk
It wouldn't
around.
be a great place for a trail, no.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
No.
I just didn't know if people wanted, if there was a reason to go down there, like there's bird watching there, or
It's not, yeah, it's pretty, no. There's a huge patch of invasive plants over there.
no, yeah.
And it's limited water access anyway, I mean, it's the smallest piece of it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty clay, and it's pretty clay, and,
You
yeah.
you can't walk
No.
down to the water there, I'm sure. Okay.
One last comment on the ash trees. So 2 summers ago, I did a bike tour on the Erie Canal Trail, so from Buffalo to Albany. One of the guys that I was riding with is an urban forester based out of Chicago. And on the western side of New York, all of the ash trees are dead. And when you get to the eastern side, there's still some. And when we were on the western side, his comment was, Detroit was ground zero for the emerald ash borer, and there are no ash trees in the upper Midwest. He said, in 15 years, all of your ash trees will be dead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing you can do to stop it.
I heard it's been getting worse and worse.
Assume they will all die in 15
Yeah.
years.
I've heard that too.
and I was like,
Well, they're already dead at Heron Point.
but
so-
yeah, I mean, you
Yeah,
can,
those
you
are
can-
dead.
you can
Those are
see
more
'em.
just like snags waiting to fall. At this, so it'll be interesting to see if Greg has a recommendation. Is it better to just have someone come in and cut them all down, and so at least they're all dropped, and they're not going to fall down?
Yeah, and you
then
might have some
something
other
else.
forest management recommendations, like to regenerate
Yeah. and then-
healthier understory, yeah.
Yep, and then things will, because there's plenty of other healthy trees in there. Have you ever looked at the map that's in the clerk's office here, right across the hall?
Probably not recently. It's probably-
There's a photo in there of a gundalo that's right up in downtown Newmarket, right there, and it's taken from this side of the river, looking across to Heron Point. There's not a tree to be seen. I think it's like about 1900 that
Amazing.
picture is taken. So it's actually kind of interesting because you know that 120 years ago there were no trees there at all. It was probably being grazed for sheep or cows or something.
There are a lot of cool rock outcrops over there.
Yeah, there are.
So
There are.
that
Yeah,
would be
nobody
nice
ever
to get this
farmed it.
trail, that other loop. If we're gonna reroute that other trail, let's make it so it goes by some really interesting rocks.
Do you have an idea if we were, because if we were going to reroute a trail, we'd want to pay someone to consult, probably, wouldn't we?
No, we can do that.
You think we
I've
could
done
do
a lot
that?
of trail.
Okay,
We have a lot
alright,
of trail
okay.
experience, yeah. We could do that.
Okay, all right. I'm glad you guys feel that way. That's good. All right, so takeaways are getting a hold of Greg, and I'll follow up with Steve, and we'll talk about it right away.
Yeah, maybe whether it's when we go out with Greg, if we can go out with Greg, we need to, think about the trail reroutes. But I don't know if we want to do that separately and schedule another 4 o'clock,
I think we
4:30.
could see what times he would have and then
Yeah.
send them out to the group. Only thing is, if we have the group here, then we got to publicly make sure we
Call the
post it
meeting.
because it's a public meeting
Sure,
then.
yeah, we could
So
put it in.
yeah, we've done that before.
Okay. But generally during the week, is there any particular evening of the week that's better or worse for people, 4:30 to 6:30 in that time frame? People are around the next 2 weeks. I know there's vacations and stuff, but coronavirus, so we have to stay 6 feet away. When I'm actually a little close in here myself, but okay, I'll check with Greg. Let you know. Great.
All
So
right.
we'll just keep working on this. And
Yep.
if you have actually, specific, some people are really into like legends and graphics. So if you have any ideas, because I just kind of put it on there. So, and again, this will be bigger, so it'll be a little more visible. But if you have ideas for colors or, and I'll take a look at the text and see what little story we might want to.
Did you see what was on All Trails for it?
No.
So we had, I think it's Christian Matthews, who works at Rockingham Planning Commission. He came here what was it, 7 or 8 months ago, to talk to us about doing All Trails, and and he reminded us we should share it on Facebook, because he's been really working hard to go out and just do that for all the trails in Newmarket. So he just wants to get more people doing it, so he's just trying to share it more broadly. But it'd be interesting to know what is out there for this on All Trails.
So All Trails, not Trail Finder. Is that what
I'm
we do,
pretty
All
sure
Trails?
it's All Trails, yeah, that he is.
Because Extension's working with a lot of partners on using trailfinder.info,
Yeah.
which is a little more controlled information, instead of All Trails, because All Trails can be a little bit roguish.
That could have been it, actually, because I think wasn't he working with the extension?
I'm thinking, because I would be
Yeah.
surprised if it was the planning
Maybe I'm
commission,
wrong.
they weren't working with Extension, so
Yeah.
my guess is that maybe
What's
it's
the Trailfinder?
trailfinder.info.
Yeah, that does sound familiar.
Now
Was
that
it
you say
Trailfinder?
I remember thinking,
Okay.
God, I never heard of it.
That makes me
and
feel a lot better.
I have All Trails in it.
Well, I'm sure he wouldn't be working
great.
with the Rogue one, because he works.
I'm thinking, I bet it's Trailfinder, so that's
It's
what I meant to do.
Trailfinder, so
Great.
that's my
Okay. Yeah, I'll take a look, yeah,
faux pas.
that's good.
Okay. Well, that
Great.
one's
All right, we'll just keep-
relatively straightforward. Now we're on to the much harder issue of Shanda Park. So hopefully all of you got a chance to complete the homework assignment and go down to Shanda Park at either. I actually did both. I went at high tide and low tide, which is really helpful. So at low tide, you see the full extent of all the erosion. High tide, you see the full reason why it's happening, basically. But the bottom line is, and I believe I shared this with everyone, Mike Hoffman sent us a letter. Mike's the code compliance officer for Newmarket, saying thinks that we need to do more to address the risk of people falling and hurting themselves. So we have the existing orange snow fence, I'll call it, and metal fence posts that are temporarily across the garden area in between where the wall is falling into the water there. But we have nothing on the other side, which is a grassy slope where I'm talking about, and it just falls down in, and there's a lot, all the rocks, all the wall is basically in the water at the bottom. So if you fall down that slope, which is what would happen, you would fall in to those rocks. So if we did the same thing, it wouldn't be very attractive. But if we just put I could work with Rick Molaski to do that, is put in more of those posts. There's the metal posts, and then connect them all with more snow fencing. We would at least have a barrier there for the coming months when it's going to be nicer and there'll be more people down there, to prevent anyone from falling. The other option, which I thought of, which would be considerably more expensive, would be we could find out if we could just actually remove the rock. So that would obviously involve an excavator. I think I'd need to get something from DES saying that we could do that and pull all that rock out of there. It would still have the slope, but then we would be minimizing sort of what people would fall into.
What would be there to protect against erosion if
And
the rock wasn't there?
I don't think is really protecting from I mean, I might be wrong. I'm not a soil person that can tell you, but I think at this point there's nothing stopping erosion down there, because all of the rock is pretty much almost in the water at this point, and whether we leave it there or not, I think it's going to continue to erode very quickly, just because the water inundates that whole area, and then when it pulls back out, the tide pulls it back out, it's just pulling all the soil with it, and it's just going to continue to move.
Like a retaining wall?
Well, we would need to reconstruct the entire wall, is what when we toured it with the town engineer, and they were talking, I think, anywhere from $500 a square foot to more to do that kind of work, and it would be substantial work, and we would have to get a shoreline permit for that as well. So again, my number one concern would be to just meet Mike at least where he is at right now and get up the temporary metal fence with the unattractive plastic and some signage saying, please do not go beyond this barrier. And we should just continue to look at it. I to do is reach out to Steve Miller and I think it's Aaron Howard at DES about what they think about that area as far as potentially for the living shoreline. Because I want to hear what you think, but I don't see how we save that area. I'm just really concerned there's not much we can do at this point because of the inundation, that it's almost underwater in that area.
I think that'd be a great idea to bring DES out there and get their ideas on what they think.
I mean, when I had them out, when they came, they did come out earlier, and last spring or last summer, and the area where the herring trap is currently stored was the area that they identified as the best area for us to do the living shoreline. But I haven't really been out to Wagon Hill to see how steep their living shoreline is, but maybe we could do something at the bottom like they're doing to, help, that's more natural, that might help with the erosion.
Theirs is it's a gradual slope.
Yeah,
But they've got, 10 times more space than
Yeah.
we do, so.
yeah.
And it's kind of like the edge of the mud flat stuff.
Yeah.
So it goes way
Very-
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like a ramp.
Yeah,
But maybe, so the two UNH professors who designed the living shoreline at Wagon Hill, maybe they would come and,
That's what we
Yeah.
need.
they would come and look
So
at it and
I'll-
say,
I've also was speaking to somebody who mentioned, I think it's ARM, Aquatic,
it's ARM funding,
ARM.
that's what funded the living shoreline
yeah,
at,
Aquatic Resource Management or something like
Right.
that, where they have
Yeah.
grants.
and I asked Steve about that when he came out. I said we would definitely be interested, and they kind of took down our information. So I think they have gotten funding right now for probably what they have, what was available.
Yeah.
But we could be in consideration. They thought that there was at least part of the waterfront, like I said, where over by where the fish trap is right now. That was the area they identified, because it is very gradual there
Yeah.
into the water. It's not steep.
So should we vote on the fencing and decide?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we would, I would ask that we approve up to $2,500 for to put in a temporary fence to protect the public in the areas of Shanda Park that are currently dangerous. I don't know if that's
That was very
how well worded that
Very
is, Sue,
well
but
worded. Didn't he? He did it. I would
that's
second that.
generally what I am proposing for tonight, just to again meet the public safety need with still looking at other options. Hopefully, maybe your UNH interns on the committee might have some ideas, or any other members of the public that come forward.
I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, so I'll reach out to Rick on that to see if he can.
I'm not voting.
Yep. All right. But yeah,
Can I help? So what do you need some help with, like somebody contacting DES, or, because you can't
well,
do
I will.
everything.
I'm just gonna send a follow-up
An
email
email?
to
Okay.
Steve, because he's already talked to us. So
Right, well, just let us know if you need help.
Who is Aaron Howard with?
I think
I
that's
think
her.
it's Kirsten Howard.
Kirsten
Kirsten
Howard.
Howard.
I always want to call her Erin
She's at
Howard.
the enforcement at DEF.
It's Kirsten Howard.
And Dave Burdick and Tom Ballestero are the two UNH professors who designed the living shoreline at Wagon Hill. So, I mean, they're right here, they're local, they might be willing to pop out and take
Yeah.
a look and say, oh, this would be cool, or no, this is no way, this would work. They're experts at it now, so.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
we should use them.
Yeah, this might be dumb, but if we're putting all this temporary fencing in, is there any way we could use that to just publicize the fact that work needs to be done in the near future? Like whether it be a
Yeah.
sign that says what's
Right.
happening, or just the idea of erosion and repairs, or just get the public behind any future
Yeah. That's a
actions,
good idea.
I guess.
Yeah. I'll see if we can put a temporary sign down there, maybe.
So I think if you see it late winter, early spring, I think a lot of people just think that it's there
Right,
because
temporary.
of the season,
It's
not because
Right.
of
Yeah.
That's right.
how significant
Yeah.
it is.
Mm.
And, it's obviously it needs some love.
Should ask the
I
town
like that idea.
manager to, put it in the newsletter,
Yeah.
to possibly with a loading feature.
Do you want to send us an email with those names of the two professors? So
Sure, the contacts and see if we can,
Okay.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to have them look at it. Sure,
Yeah.
they would pop out sometime. I had a question about the parking lot there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that part of Shanda Park, the parking area? I was down there, like at 11 o'clock and it's full, and I was wondering,
It's kind of always been a tricky question as far as I understand when I asked the town about it, because I think what happened was technically Fish and Game paid for that parking lot because that is an access point. Part of
Boat
why it
launching,
was
right,
set
so
up
boat
was for
launches, yeah.
angling, for
Yeah.
fishing, and so at least 2 spots are designated, but the other spots are sort of undesignated as far as public parking.
Yeah.
But I do think they're used by the local businesses around there quite a bit for employee parking.
Mhm.
But we've never regulated as far as, we also have a sign down there that says no dogs. Absolutely no dogs, I believe it says. It's quite the opposite. It's absolutely all dogs are down there. So, and that gets brought up all the time, and I mean, we don't really have an enforcement mechanism for either of those things unless we got the Newmarket Police involved, but I get a lot of questions about the dogs down there.
Why were you
Well, it was full, so it's like if somebody wants to visit the park, there's no place to park.
Right.
Yeah,
Because I always thought that was part of the park, that parking area was part of the
I
park.
did too. We should clarify that.
I will ask Steve again,
Thank you.
see if I can get a
I mean,
clarification.
it might be like, maybe there's 3 spots that are like,
I know
either for a
that,
boat or only 30-minute park, but you know, some.
yeah, some,
That these are
it-
for the park or something.
it does, the only thing it has down there now is it's not overnight parking.
Mm.
I believe that's the sign that's on there. We did have some signs that fell in the water last year when we had a lot of erosion. Actually had some of, because you know where the brook is. Yeah. But I'll ask him about that. I mean, even if we went to what is the standard downtown parking? 2 hours?
Yeah.
2 hours. So maybe it should be 2 hours
Yeah,
like
it's
the
good
rest of
idea.
downtown, at least it would
Yeah.
be.
And enforcement's been picking up recently, so.
Yeah.
To be clear about what spots are.
What do you, that might be something also to bring back to the council, I think, because that's a pretty, I know downtown parking's a very sensitive issue, so I'd probably
We're
want.
actually having a workshop before our next town council meeting on parking, so it'll be a good time to bring it up.
Yeah, I think it would be great if you could bring that up and see what that. Because I don't disagree. I think it should be 2 hours is fair, and that way you would get turnover and not. I know there's not a lot of parking for people that work downtown, and I don't know if that's part of your overall plan.
Yeah.
And the dogs issue needs to be addressed too.
I mean, there's a sign there. It's just a question of who would enforce it. That I don't see as big a problem with, but yeah, yeah. Any other thoughts on Chanda Park?
It's a nice park otherwise. It's a nice little park.
It is.
It is. It's a nice little park. It's just underwater on a
At high
regular
tide.
basis. Yeah, and a true king tide, it's all the way underwater.
Mm.
We don't, maybe 3 of those a year that we might get that it actually is, but just a regular high tide, it's right up to the tippy top, I would say, of the park.
Yeah, one of the things that they looked at Wagon Hill was salt marsh migration, rising sea level. So they built it so that as the water level rises with sea level, that the salt marsh will be able to be high enough and, you know, migrate back, but it won't be underwater. So that would be an issue for this site is that even gonna be possible? Is it gonna be underwater?
Right. No,
But they might have some other ideas, it may not be living shoreline, but they might have some
Right.
other restoration ideas about what could go on there, so.
yeah,
Because living shoreline it's pretty technical and it's pretty new, and you kind of have to have really the right site. And this might just need they might have some other ideas about restoration.
Yeah.
Kirsten might,
They might want
Kirsten
more rocks brought in.
could be,
yeah. Well, all right, to be continued on that. Anything else? Nope. Motion to adjourn?
second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
I don't know if this was.
That was brought